I never thought my own daughter would stand there, silent as a stone, while her husband threw my belongings into garbage bags like they were worth nothing at all. My name is Margaret, and I'm 60 years old. What I'm about to tell you happened just 2 years ago, but the pain feels like yesterday. This is the story of how I lost everything: my room, my dignity, my place in my daughter's home, and how I found something far more valuable in the process. It was a Tuesday morning in March when I heard Derek's voice booming through the hallway. My son-in-law had always been loud, but that day his voice carried a different tone. Sharp, determined, final. "Mom's arriving tomorrow," he announced, not bothering to knock before pushing open the door to what had been my room for the past 3 years. "She needs this space. You'll have to move to the basement room." I was watering the plants on my windowsill, enjoying the morning sun that streamed through the window of my bedroom. The spring light illuminated the photographs on my dresser. Pictures of my late husband Tom, my children when they were small, my parents who had passed decades ago. This room had become my sanctuary after Tom died, and I'd sold our family home to help Derek and my daughter Sarah pay off their crushing medical debts when their son was born premature. "The basement," I repeated, certain I'd misheard. The basement room was barely finished. Concrete floors, a tiny window near the ceiling, and a bathroom that flooded whenever it rained heavily. "My mother deserves the best room," Derek said, already reaching for my clothes hanging in the closet. "She raised me alone, sacrificed everything for me. This room has the attached bathroom, the natural light. She needs it for her health." I looked past him to the doorway where Sarah stood, my beautiful daughter with her father's gentle eyes. Those eyes that used to look at me with such love now couldn't meet my gaze. "Sarah?" My voice cracked. "Honey, you're going to let this happen?" She twisted her wedding ring around her finger, a nervous habit she'd had since she was a little girl. "Mom, it's just temporary. Derek's mother had a bad fall. She needs extra care. We can't put her in the basement. She's our guest." "And I'm what? A piece of furniture to be moved around?" Derek grabbed an armful of my clothes, hangers clattering. "You're being dramatic. It's just a room. My mother is elderly. She needs comfort. She's used to having the best." "I'm 60 years old, Derek. I'm elderly too. I also need comfort." "You're different," he said dismissively. "You're family. You understand sacrifice. My mother has always been treated with respect in her own home. She deserves the same here." The implication hung in the air like poison. I wasn't worthy of the same respect as his mother. I was family, which meant I could be pushed aside, taken for granted, diminished. Within 3 hours, everything I owned was crammed into the basement room. My bed barely fit between the concrete walls. My clothes went into plastic storage bins stacked in the corner. The photographs I'd kept on my dresser for 3 years were packed away in cardboard boxes. There was no space for my reading chair, where I used to sit in the afternoon light. No place for my small desk, where I wrote letters to old friends. The basement room smelled of mildew and old paint. The ceiling was low, with exposed pipes running across it. The tiny window near the ceiling let in barely enough light to see by during the day. At night, the single bare bulb cast harsh shadows on the walls. That night, I lay in that cold basement room, listening to the sounds of preparation in the house above me. The room that had been mine, being cleaned and aired out for Derek's mother, fresh flowers being arranged, the expensive sheets being put on the bed that I'd bought with my own money. I didn't cry. I was too shocked, too hurt, too angry, but I made a decision in that darkness. This wouldn't break me. Somehow, some way, I would find my path forward. I had survived widowhood. I had survived losing my home, and I would survive this too. The arrival of Patricia, Derek's mother, arrived the next afternoon in a luxury car service, with enough designer luggage for a month-long cruise. Patricia Whitmore was a tall, elegant woman, with silver hair styled in an expensive cut, and the kind of confidence that comes from a lifetime of getting exactly what she wanted. She swept into the house like she owned it, barely glancing at me when Sarah introduced us. "So, this is your mother," Patricia said, looking me up and down with cold assessment. "Derek mentioned you were staying here." The way she said staying here made it sound temporary, like I was some distant relative who'd overstayed her welcome. "Welcome," I said, forcing politeness into my voice. Years of being a nurse had taught me to maintain composure, even when I wanted to scream. "I hope you'll be comfortable." "I'm sure I will be," she replied, already turning away from me toward the staircase. "Derek has given me the master guest room. He's such a thoughtful son, always putting his mother first." The emphasis on first was deliberate. She wanted me to know my place in the hierarchy of this household. Over the following days, I watched as Patricia settled into my former room, like a queen claiming her throne. She redecorated immediately, replacing the simple curtains I'd made myself with expensive designer drapes she'd ordered online. She complained about the morning sun, so Derek installed blackout shades at $300 a pop. She didn't like the furniture arrangement, so he rearranged everything to her exact specifications. Meanwhile, I remained in the basement, emerging only to help with meals and household tasks, because that was expected too. Despite being displaced, despite being treated like hired help, I was still expected to contribute to the household. "Mom, can you make Patricia's special herbal tea?" Sarah would ask, using his mother's first name with a reverence she never showed to me anymore. "She only likes it prepared a certain way." "Mom, Patricia is on a special diet. Can you make something separate for her?" "Mom, Patricia needs someone to drive her to her hair appointment. You're not working, so you have time, right?" Each request chipped away at my dignity a little more, but I complied. Because what choice did I have? I had sold my house, the house Tom and I had spent 30 years paying off, to help them with those medical bills. $80,000 I'd given them, which was every penny of equity I'd had. My retirement savings were minimal, because Tom's illness had eaten through most of our savings before he passed. I had nowhere else to go. My son lived across the country with his own family and could barely afford his own bills. This was my reality now. Patricia quickly established herself as the lady of the house. She would hold court in the living room, while Derek and Sarah catered to her every whim. She criticized everything. The food was too bland or too spicy. The house was too cold or too hot. The neighborhood was too quiet or too noisy. But her favorite target was me. In my day, mothers-in-law were treated like queens, she would announce loudly, making sure I could hear from the kitchen where I was washing dishes. We weren't shuffled into basements and forgotten. The irony was completely lost on her. Or perhaps it wasn't. Perhaps it was deliberate cruelty. One evening, about a week after her arrival, I was preparing dinner when I overheard her talking to Derek in the living room. The kitchen was just off the living room, and their voices carried clearly. "You need to think about the future," she was saying. This house isn't big enough for everyone. Maybe it's time for her to move to one of those senior living communities. I've heard Shady Pines is quite nice. Mom, that's Sarah's mother you're talking about, Derek said, but his voice held no real protest. Exactly. And she should want what's best for her daughter. A married couple needs their space. And when I come to visit, which I plan to do regularly now, you need room for me. 3 women in 1 kitchen never works. You know that. I gripped the edge of the counter, my hands trembling. She'd been here 1 week and was already trying to push me out entirely. That night, I heard Derek and Sarah arguing in their bedroom. The basement was directly below their room, and sound traveled easily through the old floors. Your mother is living in an unfinished basement, Derek. It's not even properly heated. Sarah's voice was strained. It's temporary. My mother needs proper care right now. Your mom is healthy. She can handle it. But it's not right. Not right? Was it right that we were drowning in medical debt and your mother's money saved us? Was it right that now I have to feel like I owe her something every single day? I'm trying to balance everything, Sarah. My mother sacrificed everything to raise me alone after Dad left. She deserves comfort in her old age. And mine doesn't? She lost her husband, sold her home. She made that choice. Derek cut her off sharply. Nobody forced her to sell. She knew what she was getting into. My mother is a guest. There's a difference. I heard Sarah crying softly after that, but she said nothing more. And I understood then that my daughter was trapped between loyalty to her mother and loyalty to her husband. In that battle, I knew which side would always win. The basement prisoner. Life in the basement became my bleak, new reality. I would wake before dawn in that cold, damp space. My arthritis screaming from the concrete floors in poor heating. The room was so cramped that I had to carefully navigate around storage boxes just to reach the bathroom, a tiny space with a toilet that ran constantly and a shower that never quite got hot enough. I developed a routine to maintain my sanity. I would wake at 5:30 before anyone else stirred and use the upstairs bathroom to wash properly since the basement shower was practically useless. Then I'd make coffee for everyone and start breakfast before Patricia woke at 7, expecting her meal served just right. Patricia had very specific requirements. Her eggs had to be poached exactly 3 minutes, no more, no less. Her toast had to be whole grain, lightly buttered on only one side. Her coffee had to be French press, not drip, with a precise amount of cream. Any deviation would result in complaints to Derek, who would then have a word with Sarah, who would then gently remind me to try to keep things peaceful. One morning, about a month into this arrangement, I was climbing the basement stairs with a basket of laundry when my vision suddenly blurred. I grabbed the railing, my heart pounding irregularly in my chest. The basket tumbled down the stairs, clothes scattering everywhere. "Mom!" Sarah had heard the commotion and rushed over. "Are you okay?" "Just dizzy," I managed to say, lowering myself to sit on the steps. "I'm fine." But I wasn't fine. The damp basement was aggravating my asthma. My blood pressure was dangerously high. I'd checked it at the pharmacy. The stress and poor living conditions were literally making me sick. "You should see Dr. Patterson," Sarah said, genuine worry in her voice. "With what insurance?" I asked quietly. "I lost my coverage when I sold the house and gave up my part-time nursing job at the clinic. I can't afford the premiums now." Shame flickered across her face. "We'll figure something out, Mom." But we both knew that wouldn't happen. Every spare dollar went toward maintaining Patricia's comfort or paying down the remaining medical debt. My health needs came last. That afternoon, while I was changing the sheets in Patricia's room, the room that had been mine, I paused to look around. She had completely transformed it. Where my simple family photos had hung, there were expensive pieces of art she'd brought from her condo. Where my modest furniture had stood, there were new pieces that Derek had purchased at her request. My reading nook by the window had been replaced with her elaborate vanity table covered in costly cosmetics. It was as if I had never existed in this space at all. "Are you just going to stand there?" Patricia's sharp voice startled me. She had entered without my hearing. "If you're going to clean, then clean properly. I found dust on the nightstand yesterday." "I'll make sure everything is perfect," I said, turning back to my task. "You know," she said, settling into her plush armchair, "when I raised Derek, I taught him the value of respect. Real respect, not just empty words. I wonder if you taught your daughter the same values, or if you taught her to be a doormat like you." I stopped tucking the sheets and turned to face her. "Excuse me? I'm just saying that a strong daughter would never allow her mother to live in a basement. A strong daughter would stand up to her husband and demand better. But then, perhaps Sarah learned her weakness from you. Perhaps you taught her to just accept whatever life hands her." The cruelty of her words stole my breath. She was blaming me for my own circumstances, suggesting that I had somehow failed as a mother because my daughter didn't fight for me. "Sarah loves me," I said quietly. "Love?" Patricia laughed coldly. "Love without action is meaningless. You gave away your power when you sold your house. You made yourself dependent, and now look where it got you. If you had any backbone, you wouldn't be in this situation." She wasn't entirely wrong, and that made her words cut even deeper. I had made myself vulnerable by selling my home. I had believed that family would always be there for me, that my sacrifice would be remembered and honored. I had been naive and foolish, but something in me shifted in that moment. Patricia was right about one thing. I had given away my power, but that didn't mean I couldn't reclaim it. An unexpected ally. 2 months crawled by in that miserable existence. I had become a ghost in the house, present but invisible, useful but unvalued. The basement felt smaller every day, and my health continued to decline. I'd developed a persistent cough from the mold I'd discovered growing behind the storage boxes. One Saturday afternoon in May, Derek's younger brother Michael came to visit. Unlike Derek, Michael had always been kind to me, often asking how I was doing, and actually listening to my answers. "Where's Margaret?" I heard Michael ask as he arrived. "In her room," Derek answered vaguely. "I brought those organic tomatoes from the farmer's market she mentioned loving. Can I drop them off to her?" There was an awkward pause. Then Derek said, "She's in the basement. We had to relocate her when Mom came to stay." "The basement?" Michael's voice rose sharply. "You're kidding me. Brother, you cannot have someone living in that unfinished basement. It's temporary. Mom needs proper accommodation." "Mom," Michael interrupted, "what about Sarah's mother? The woman who gave you $80,000 and saved your family from bankruptcy? You put her in the basement." "You don't understand the full situation," Derek said defensively. "Then explain it to me, because from where I'm standing, this looks like you've completely forgotten who bailed you out when you were about to lose everything." Their voices faded as they moved to another room. But I'd heard enough. For the first time since this nightmare began, someone was speaking up for me. Someone saw the injustice. 10 minutes later, there was a gentle knock on the basement door. "Margaret, it's Michael. May I come down?" I opened the door, and the shock that registered on his face when he saw my living conditions told me everything. This decent man, Derek's own brother, immediately understood what everyone else had chosen to ignore. "Margaret," he said slowly, his eyes taking in the cramped space, the exposed pipes, the moisture stains on the walls, the single inadequate light bulb. This is completely unacceptable." I gestured toward the only chair, a folding one from the garage. He sat down, and I perched on the edge of my bed. "Tell me everything," he said. "How long have you been living like this?" 2 months, I admitted, "since Patricia arrived." Michael shook his head in disgust. "My mother wouldn't want this if she truly understood. She can't possibly know how bad these conditions are." "She knows," I said gently. "She's the one who suggested I should move to Shady Pines Senior Living." His jaw tightened. "She said what?" I told him everything then. The casual cruelties, the daily humiliations, how I'd become invisible in the house that my money had helped save. I told him about my declining health, the chest pains and dizzy spells, the sleepless nights in that cold, damp room, wondering how my life had come to this point. When I finished, Michael sat quietly for a long moment. Then he said something that would change the trajectory of my life. "Margaret, I have a proposition, but first, I need to ask you something. You were a nurse, right? Before you retired?" "Yes. I was an RN for 35 years. Mostly pediatrics. Some home health care toward the end." "Are you still licensed?" "I let my license lapse after Tom died. I didn't think I'd need it anymore. But I suppose I could reactivate it if I took some continuing education courses." "Here's what I'm thinking," Michael said, leaning forward intently. "I have a friend who runs a home health care agency. She's desperate for experienced nurses, especially for evening and weekend shifts. The pay is good, really good. With your experience, you'd probably start around $30 an hour. That's generous, but I don't have my license anymore, and those CE courses cost money." "I'll loan you the money for the courses," Michael interrupted. "You can pay me back once you're working. And here's the other thing. I have a mother-in-law suite above my garage that's been sitting empty since my wife's mother passed away last year. It's furnished, has its own entrance, full kitchen and bathroom. You could live there while you get back on your feet. I won't charge you rent, just help with utilities." I stared at him, unable to process what he was offering. "Michael, I can't accept charity." "It's not charity," he said firmly. "It's family helping family, which is what Derek should have done from the beginning. Margaret, you gave my brother $80,000. You saved his family. The least I can do is give you a safe place to live and help you regain your independence." "Why are you doing this?" I asked, tears finally breaking through. "Because it's the right thing to do," Michael said simply. "And because I have a feeling that once you're back on your feet, you're going to teach my brother and mother a lesson they desperately need to learn." That night, lying in that awful basement room, for what I hoped would be one of the last times, I made a decision. I would accept Michael's help. I would rebuild my life. And I would show Sarah, Derek, and Patricia that I was not some helpless old woman to be discarded and forgotten. I was Margaret Ann Harrison. I had raised 2 children alone after Tom got sick. I had worked double shifts at the hospital to keep our home. I had survived loss and hardship. And I would survive this too. Not just survive, but triumph. The path to independence Michael moved quickly. Within a week, he had enrolled me in an online license renewal course and set me up in the apartment above his garage. The space was like heaven compared to that basement. Clean, warm, with large windows that let in beautiful natural light. There was a comfortable bed, a full kitchen, a bathroom that actually worked properly, and most importantly, my own private entrance. For the first time in months, I could breathe. Moving out of Derek and Sarah's house was awkward. I did it on a Tuesday afternoon when I knew Derek was at work and Patricia was at her book club. Sarah helped me carry my boxes upstairs, tears streaming down her face. "Mom, you don't have to leave," she said. "We can figure something out." "Sarah, honey," I interrupted gently. "I love you, but I can't live like that anymore. It was killing me, literally. My health was failing." "I should have stood up for you more," she whispered. "I should have fought harder." "Yes, you should have," I agreed, not sugarcoating it. "But you chose your husband over your mother, and I understand why you felt you had to. Now, I'm choosing myself. For the first time in my life, I'm putting my own needs first." She hugged me tightly. "Will you still come visit? Will you still see the kids?" "Of course," I assured her. "I'm not abandoning you. I'm just reclaiming my life." I didn't say goodbye to Derek or Patricia. I simply left a note on the kitchen counter. "I've moved out. Thank you for the hospitality. I'll be in touch about visiting my grandchildren." Over the next 6 weeks, I threw myself into my renewal courses. My nursing knowledge came flooding back. It was like muscle memory. I studied pharmacology updates, new wound care techniques, electronic health records. I passed my exams with high scores and reactivated my license. Michael's friend Karen, who ran the home health agency, hired me immediately. My first assignment was caring for an elderly man recovering from hip surgery. I worked 3 12-hour shifts per week, which was perfect, enough to earn good money, but not so much that I exhausted myself. The first time I held a paycheck with my own name on it, $1,100 for 1 week's work, I literally cried. This was my money, earned through my own skills and labor. I wasn't dependent on anyone. I began paying Michael back for the course fees. He protested, but I insisted. "You gave me a hand up," I told him, "not a handout. I'm paying my debts." I also started saving aggressively. I opened a separate savings account and called it my Independence Fund. Every paycheck, I deposited at least half of it. I was 60 years old, but I was determined to buy my own small place within 2 years. During this time, I maintained minimal contact with Sarah's family. I would visit every other Sunday to see my grandchildren, but I kept the visits short and polite. I was cordial to Derek and Patricia, but no longer went out of my way to please them. I didn't offer to cook or clean. I didn't ask how they were managing without my unpaid labor. I simply showed up, spent time with the kids, and left. The change in dynamic was noticeable. Patricia seemed confused by my new demeanor. I wasn't the subservient woman she'd pushed into the basement. Derek was awkward, sometimes trying to make small talk that I politely shut down. Sarah was caught in the middle, clearly wanting to rebuild our relationship, but not knowing how. 3 months into my new life, something interesting happened. I arrived for my Sunday visit to find Patricia looking exhausted and Derek frustrated. "Everything okay?" I asked, though I wasn't particularly concerned. "Mom's been here for 5 months now," Sarah said carefully, "and it's been challenging managing everything. The house, the kids, her needs. I've had to cut back my work hours." I nodded sympathetically, but offered no help. That does sound difficult. There was an awkward pause. They were clearly hoping I'd offer to step in, to resume my role as unpaid helper. I didn't. Anyway, I said brightly, I brought the kids some books. Where are they? As I played with my grandchildren that afternoon, I couldn't help but notice the tension in the house. Dishes were piled in the sink. Laundry was stacked on the couch. Patricia was complaining about something to Derek in the other room. Sarah looked exhausted. They were learning what my labor had been worth. They were discovering that taking care of a household and a demanding elderly woman required actual work I had done without complaint or compensation for 3 years. I felt no satisfaction in their struggle, but I felt no guilt either. I had paid my dues. The consequences unfold. By month 6, the cracks in Derek and Sarah's household were becoming chasms. During my Sunday visits, I could see the strain clearly. Sarah had deep circles under her eyes from constantly managing Patricia's demands, while also caring for 2 young children and trying to maintain her part-time job as a graphic designer. Derek was working longer hours, presumably to avoid the chaos at home. Patricia, instead of being grateful for the upheaval her presence had caused, was becoming increasingly demanding and critical. One Sunday in November, I arrived to find Sarah in tears in the kitchen, while Patricia's voice rang out from the living room, complaining about the temperature being too cold. "Mom," Sarah said, when she saw me, her voice breaking, "I don't know how you did it. I don't know how you managed everything without falling apart." "I nearly did fall apart," I reminded her gently. "That's why I left. I know, and I'm so sorry. Derek and I talked about it, and we were wrong. We were so wrong to treat you that way." I nodded, acknowledging her apology, but not rushing to absolve her guilt. She needed to sit with the discomfort of what they'd done. "Patricia needs more care than we can provide," Sarah continued. "She's fallen twice in the past month. Nothing serious, but it's scary. And she refuses to listen to us about anything. She won't use the walker the doctor recommended. She won't let Derek hire a home health aide because she says strangers can't be trusted. She only wants family to care for her. Then Derek needs to take a leave from work," I suggested practically. "He can't. We can't afford it, especially with me working reduced hours. And honestly, Mom," Sarah lowered her voice, "Patricia is so much more difficult than we realized. She's critical of everything. She complains constantly. Nothing is ever right. I don't know how to make her happy." "You can't make her happy," I said quietly. "Some people are never happy. They're only satisfied when they're making others miserable." Sarah looked at me with new understanding. "Is that how it was for you?" "Every single day," I confirmed. Over the next few weeks, I watched from my comfortable distance as the situation deteriorated further. Patricia fell again, this time requiring a brief hospital stay. The medical bills added to their financial stress. Sarah was at her breaking point. Derek was irritable and defensive, and the kids were acting out from the tension in the home. Michael kept me updated on family gossip. "Derek actually called me asking if you'd consider coming back to help," he told me one evening over dinner. "I told him he had lost his mind if he thought you'd return to that situation." "What did he say?" "He said they'd make it worth my while. He'd pay you a salary to live there and help with Mom's care." I laughed. Actually laughed. "After everything, he thinks he can just hire me back? Like I'm some servant he can summon when convenient?" "That's exactly what I said," Michael agreed. "I told him you're doing great, earning good money, living independently, and that ship had sailed. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. 3 weeks before Christmas, Sarah called me in tears. "Mom, I need you. Not to move back in, just, I need your help." Patricia fell again. She broke her hip this time. She's having surgery tomorrow, and then she'll need intensive care during recovery. Derek is overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed. We can't do this alone. The old Margaret would have rushed over immediately, sacrificing her own well-being to rescue them. The new Margaret paused and thought carefully. "Sarah," I said slowly, "I love you, and I'll help you, but I have conditions." "Anything, Mom, anything. First, Derek needs to formally apologize to me. Not a quick sorry, a real apology acknowledging how he treated me. Second, Patricia needs to apologize as well, or at minimum, acknowledge her behavior was unacceptable. Third, if I agree to help, I'm paid as a professional caregiver, $25 an hour. Fourth, I work specific shifts, and when I'm off duty, I'm off duty. I go home to Michael's apartment, and I'm not on call. And fifth, this is temporary, just until Patricia is well enough to move to assisted living or back to her own home." There was silence on the other end. Then Sarah said quietly, "Those are fair terms. I'll talk to Derek." That conversation, I later learned, did not go well. Derek was furious that I would demand payment from family. Patricia was outraged that I would hold her medical crisis hostage. But Sarah, for the first time in our ordeal, stood her ground. "Mom's terms are more than reasonable," she told them, according to Michael. "She's a licensed nurse. We'd pay a stranger more than $25 an hour for the same care, and after how we treated her, we're lucky she's willing to help at all. So either you both apologize, or you figure out Patricia's care some other way." The apology. Derek and Patricia had no choice but to agree to my terms. Patricia's surgery went well, but her recovery would be lengthy and require skilled nursing care. The alternative was hiring round-the-clock professional care at triple the cost, or placing Patricia in a rehabilitation facility, which she adamantly refused. 3 days after Patricia came home from the hospital, Derek called me. "Margaret," he began, and I could hear how much the words cost him. "I need to apologize to you. I treated you terribly. I prioritized my mother's comfort over basic human decency toward you. I allowed you to be displaced into unlivable conditions after you'd given us everything to help our family. I'm ashamed of my behavior, and I'm deeply sorry." The apology sounded rehearsed, but the shame in his voice was real. "Thank you for saying that," I replied simply. I didn't say, "I forgive you," because I hadn't yet decided if I did. "Will you help us?" he asked. I told Sarah my terms. "If you agree to them, I'll come." "We agree. All of them." "And Patricia? Has she agreed to apologize?" There was a long pause. "She's struggling with that, but she knows it's necessary." When I arrived at their house the next day, professional nursing bag in hand, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Patricia was installed in the hospital bed they'd rented, positioned in the living room since she couldn't manage stairs. She looked diminished in a way I'd never seen, fragile in pain, and for the first time, uncertain. I set my bag down and approached her bed. "Hello, Patricia." She looked at me with something between resentment and desperation. "Margaret, I understand you have something to say to me before we begin." Her jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought she'd refuse. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "I'm sorry. I treated you poorly. I looked down on you and made your life difficult. I'm asking you to help me now, even though I don't deserve it. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was real. I could see it cost her pride dearly. Thank you, I said. Now, let's discuss your care plan. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked 12-hour shifts, 3 days a week, providing skilled nursing care for Patricia. I administered medications, managed her pain, helped with physical therapy exercises, monitored her vital signs, changed her surgical dressings, and assisted with basic needs. I was professional, efficient, and competent. I was also completely emotionally detached. This was my job now, not my family obligation. When my shift ended, I went home to my peaceful apartment. I didn't stay for dinner. I didn't help with other household tasks. I didn't play with the grandkids during work hours. Sarah handled my payment promptly every week, writing checks that I deposited immediately. The first one felt like vindication, getting paid for labor I'd once done for free while living in a basement. Something interesting happened during those weeks. Patricia, forced to depend entirely on my skill and kindness, began to change. Small things at first, saying please and thank you, following my instructions without complaint, even occasionally asking me questions about my life. One afternoon, about 3 weeks into her recovery, she said something that surprised me. "You're very good at this," she said, as I helped her through her exercises. "I can tell you were an excellent nurse." "Thank you. I loved my work. Derek told me you gave up a lot to help him and Sarah," she continued, not meeting my eyes. "He said you sold your house, that you gave them everything." "I did. And then we treated you like garbage." It wasn't a question. "Yes, you did." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "I was jealous of you." That stopped me mid-movement. "Jealous? Of what?" "Of your relationship with Sarah, of how much she loved you." "Derek loves me, but it's different, obligatory. Sarah genuinely loved spending time with you, talking to you. You were her best friend. I wanted Derek to see me that way, to want me around, not just feel duty-bound to care for me." The honesty in her confession was startling. "So you pushed me out to take my place?" I convinced myself I deserved it more, that I'd sacrificed more raising Derek alone. But the truth is, I was just a bitter, lonely woman, taking it out on someone who didn't deserve it. "No, I didn't deserve it," I agreed. "But thank you for being honest." "Will you ever forgive me?" she asked. I considered the question carefully. "I don't know yet, but I appreciate the apology." The shift in power. As Patricia's recovery progressed, the dynamics in the household underwent a profound transformation. She was no longer the commanding presence who had swept in and taken over. Pain, vulnerability, and dependence had humbled her. And in that humbling, something unexpected emerged: respect. 6 weeks into her recovery, Patricia had regained enough mobility to move around with a walker. She no longer needed intensive nursing care, just monitoring and assistance. According to our agreement, this meant my formal caregiving role was coming to an end. During what was supposed to be one of my last shifts, Patricia asked if we could talk privately. I settled into the chair beside her bed. "I know our arrangement is ending soon," she began. "And I know I have no right to ask anything of you after how I behaved, but I need to tell you something. I'm listening, living here these past months, being cared for by you, while watching Sarah struggle to manage everything else. I finally understand what you were doing for this family. You weren't just living here rent-free, like I told myself. You were holding everything together: the cooking, the cleaning, the childcare, the errands, the emotional labor. You were doing the work of 3 people. She paused, gathering her thoughts. I've watched Sarah try to do what you did, and she's drowning. The house is chaos. The children are stressed. Derek is never home because he can't handle the pressure. And I realized I did this. I destroyed something that was working because I was selfish and cruel. What are you saying, Patricia? I'm saying I want to go back to my own condo. I'm well enough now with some home health aid visits. And I'm saying that you built something valuable here with your daughter's family. And I destroyed it. I don't know if it can be repaired, but I want you to know that I see it now. I see what I did. Her words hung in the air between us. This was more than an apology. It was genuine remorse, understanding, and accountability. Thank you for saying that, I replied. It means more than you know. There's something else, Patricia continued. I've been talking to Derek about finances. He told me you gave them $80,000 to save them from bankruptcy. That money came from selling your home, your security, your future. Yes, it did. That was an enormous sacrifice, and they've never properly acknowledged it. So I want to do something. She reached for an envelope on her bedside table and handed it to me. This is a check for $40,000. It's half of what you gave them. I know it doesn't undo the harm I caused, but I want you to have some of your security back. I opened the envelope and stared at the check, genuinely shocked. Patricia, I can't accept this. Yes, you can, and you will, she said firmly, showing a flash of her old commanding self. I'm a wealthy woman, Margaret. My late husband left me very well provided for. $40,000 won't change my life, but it could change yours. Take it. Rebuild your savings. Buy yourself a small condo. Give yourself the independence you deserve. Tears filled my eyes. Why are you doing this? Because it's right. Because I wronged you terribly. And this is one way I can begin to make amends. And because, she paused, her own eyes glistening, because you showed me grace when I deserved none. You could have refused to help me. You could have provided minimal care and let me suffer. Instead, you were professional, kind, and competent. You taught me what real strength looks like. I folded the check carefully and placed it in my pocket. Thank you, Patricia. This is incredibly generous. It's not generosity. It's restitution. There's a difference. 2 weeks later, Patricia moved back to her condo with a home health aide, visiting twice daily. The house felt different without her. Lighter, calmer. Sarah invited me to dinner that first evening after Patricia left. Mom, Derek and I have been talking, Sarah said as we sat in the living room after the kids were in bed. We want you to know that we understand now what we put you through. Living it ourselves these past months opened our eyes. Derek nodded, looking genuinely contrite. I was arrogant and cruel. I took your sacrifice for granted and treated you like you were disposable. I'm ashamed of the man I was during that time. We want to make things right, Sarah continued. We know you're happy in Michael's apartment, and we're not asking you to move back in. But we want to pay you back for what you gave us. We've talked to a financial advisor, and we have a plan to return your $80,000 over the next 5 years. I was stunned. You don't have to do that. Yes, we do, Derek interrupted. It was never a gift. Not really. It was a loan, even if we all pretended otherwise. You gave us your future to save ours. The least we can do is give it back. We'll start with monthly payments of $1,500, Sarah explained. It's tight, but we can manage it. And if the business continues to grow like it has been, we'll pay it back even faster. I looked at my daughter and son-in-law, seeing genuine remorse and determination in their faces. Are you sure? That's a significant financial commitment. We're sure, they said in unison. Then I accept. Thank you. Rebuilding what was broken. The months that followed brought healing, slowly and carefully. With Patricia's $40,000 plus my savings from nursing work, I had nearly $60,000 in my independence fund. Combined with the monthly payments Sarah and Derek were making, I was on track to buy my own small condo within 18 months instead of 2 years. My relationship with Sarah began to mend. We started having lunch together once a week, just the two of us. At first, our conversations were awkward, dancing around the pain of what had happened. But gradually, we found our way back to each other. I failed you as a daughter, Sarah told me one afternoon over coffee. I chose my marriage over my mother, and then I stood by while you were treated like you didn't matter. You were in an impossible position, I acknowledged. Derek put you there. But yes, you failed me. You can't erase that, but you can learn from it. I've learned so much, Mom. I've learned that love without action is meaningless. I've learned that sacrifice shouldn't be one-sided. I've learned that I'm stronger than I thought, strong enough to stand up to Derek when he's wrong. That's growth, I said, and I'm proud of you for it. We cried together that day, releasing months of pain and resentment. It wasn't a magic fix. We still had work to do, but it was a beginning. Derek also made efforts to rebuild trust. He started including me in family decisions, asking my opinion, and actually listening to my answers. He made sure the kids understood that Grandma Margaret was important and valued. He never again dismissed my needs or feelings. One Sunday, he pulled me aside. Margaret, I need you to know something. What I did to you, moving you to the basement, prioritizing my mother's comfort over your basic dignity. It's the thing I'm most ashamed of in my life. I was raised by a manipulative woman who taught me that her needs always came first, and I perpetuated that cruelty onto you. I'm working with a therapist to understand why I did that and to make sure I never treat anyone that way again. I appreciate you telling me that, I replied, and I appreciate that you're doing the work to change. I don't expect you to forget what happened, he continued, but I hope someday you can forgive me. I'm working on it, I said honestly. Surprisingly, Patricia also remained in the picture, though in a much healthier way. She called me monthly to check in, always respectful and never demanding. She sent birthday cards to my grandchildren. She even invited me to lunch at her condo one day. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, she said over tea, and I've realized that I spent my whole life demanding respect instead of earning it. I confuse fear with respect, obedience with love. Derek cares for me out of duty, not genuine affection, and that's my own fault. It's never too late to build real relationships, I offered. I'm trying. I've apologized to Derek for how I raised him, for making him feel like he always had to put me first, for manipulating him with guilt. I'm trying to be the mother he deserved instead of the mother I was. That takes courage, I acknowledged. You inspired it, she said. Watching you maintain your dignity even when we stripped everything else away, that was powerful. You never begged, never groveled, never compromised your self-worth. You just quietly left and rebuilt your life. That's real strength. My nursing career flourished. Karen promoted me to senior nurse, and gave me the option to mentor new caregivers. I discovered I loved teaching, sharing the knowledge I'd accumulated over decades. My income increased, and my independence fund grew steadily. 14 months after leaving Derek and Sarah's basement, I bought my own condo. It was small, just 2 bedrooms, but it was mine. I owned it outright with the money I'd saved and Patricia's gift. No mortgage, no rent, no dependence on anyone. The day I moved in, Sarah helped me unpack. We hung pictures together, arranged furniture, made the space feel like home. "I'm so proud of you, Mom," she said, standing in my sunny living room. "Look at what you've built." "I learned something through all of this," I told her. "I learned that you can't pour from an empty cup." For years, I gave and gave and gave, and I had nothing left for myself. I let myself become depleted, and then I was surprised when people treated me like I was worthless. But worth isn't something other people give you. It's something you claim for yourself. "Is that why you didn't come back when we asked?" she said. "Even though you knew we were struggling?" "Partly, but also because I needed to prove to myself that I could stand on my own. I needed to know that I was more than just someone's mother, someone's helper, someone's nurse. I needed to rediscover Margaret. Not Mom, not Grandma, just me." Sarah hugged me tightly. "I'm glad you found yourself again. And I'm sorry we made you lose yourself in the first place." The lesson learned. 2 years have passed since that terrible Tuesday when Derek threw my belongings into garbage bags and moved me to the basement. 2 years since I felt my life had ended and my worth had evaporated. Today, I'm 62 years old. I own my own home. I have a career I love. I have savings in the bank and a retirement plan. I have my dignity and my independence. And I have relationships with my family that, while scarred, are stronger and more honest than they were before. Last month, Sarah and Derek made their final payment on the $80,000. We had a small celebration, just the 4 of us and the kids, to mark the occasion. "We want you to know something," Derek said, handing me the last check. "Paying you back wasn't a burden. It was an honor. Every month, when I wrote that check, I remembered what you sacrificed for us. I remembered how we failed you. And I remembered that I never want to be that person again. The money matters," I acknowledged. "But what matters more is that you both learned something from this experience. We learned that family isn't an excuse to exploit people," Sarah said. "We learned that sacrifice should be voluntary and appreciated, not expected and taken for granted. We learned that every person deserves dignity and respect, especially the people we love most. And we learned it from you," Derek added. "You could have been bitter and vengeful. You could have cut us out of your life completely. Instead, you set boundaries, maintained your self-respect, and showed us what real strength looks like. You taught us by example. I look back on that terrible time, the basement, the humiliation, the pain, and I don't regret it anymore. Not because it didn't hurt, but because it transformed me. It forced me to rediscover my worth when everyone around me had forgotten it. It pushed me to reclaim my independence when dependence had nearly destroyed me. It taught me that sometimes you have to lose everything to find yourself." Patricia visits occasionally now. We're not close friends, but we have a cordial, respectful relationship. She tells me I changed her life, that watching me rebuild from nothing inspired her to examine her own behavior and make changes. "You know what the difference is between us," she said during her last visit. "When life knocked you down, you got back up and built something better. When life knocked me down, I just expected someone else to pick me up. You taught me that real power comes from within, not from controlling others. My grandchildren are older now, and they know the story of what happened. Age-appropriate versions, of course. They know that Grandma Margaret had to leave for a while to take care of herself. They know that sometimes even families make mistakes and have to work hard to fix them. And they know that their grandma is strong, independent, and capable. Last week, my youngest granddaughter asked me, "Grandma, were you scared when you left? When you had to start over?" "Terrified," I admitted. I was 60 years old, with no home, no savings, no job. I had every reason to believe I'd failed. "But you didn't fail," she said with the certainty of a child. "You won." And she's right. I did win. Not because I got revenge or made them suffer. I won because I refused to let their treatment of me define my worth. I won because I bet on myself when no one else would. I won because I proved that it's never too late to start over, to reclaim your life, to demand the respect you deserve. If you're reading this and you find yourself in a similar situation, undervalued, taken for granted, living in circumstances that diminish you, please hear this. You deserve better. You deserve dignity. You deserve respect. And you have the power to claim it for yourself. It won't be easy. It will be scary and uncertain and uncomfortable. People will try to guilt you into staying small. They'll say you're being selfish, ungrateful, difficult. They'll expect you to sacrifice yourself on the altar of family harmony. But you are not a sacrifice. You are a person with inherent worth and dignity. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for others is to walk away from situations that diminish you and build something better. That's what I did. And if a 60-year-old widow with no home and no job can rebuild her life from scratch, so can you. Today, I sit in my sunny living room in my own condo, surrounded by the photos and mementos I had to pack away 2 years ago. My nursing bag sits by the door, ready for tomorrow's shift. My savings account is healthy. My relationships with my daughter and grandchildren are strong. I am not defined by what happened to me in that basement. I am defined by how I rose from it. Derek regretted what he did, bitterly, deeply, genuinely. But more importantly, I never regretted leaving. I never regretted betting on myself. I never regretted choosing dignity over comfort, independence over security, self-respect over family harmony. And that, my friends, makes all the difference. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away from people who don't value you and build a life where you value yourself. Margaret's story reminds us that it's never too late to start over, to reclaim your dignity, and to demand the respect you deserve. Real family doesn't ask you to diminish yourself. Real love doesn't require you to suffer in silence. And real strength isn't enduring mistreatment. It's having the courage to walk away from it and build something better.